So if you see different types of media, you have traditional media, print media, electronic media, and digital and social media. Now these media are accelerators of social change. When we say social change, it is change in social institutions, values, norms, traditions, etc. See, traditional media is like folklore, storytelling, maybe dance or drama, music, etc. Print media is newspapers, magazines, journals, etc. Electronic media refers to radio and television. This you already know. So before independence, the role of traditional media and print media was high, but after independence, electronic media and digital media played an important role. So what are the impacts of this media? If you see, you have positive impact and you have negative impact. A positive impact, if you see, like empowerment, and development awareness, and then you have democratization, you have gender empowerment, then you have political mobilization, etc. And negative impact, if you see, you have like cultural homogenization, fake news and polarization, and then you can see like gender violence and stereotyping, and biasness. So these are some positive and negative impacts. So that topic was left in the last class. See, in 6.1 there is this tribal situation in India in which you have biogenetic variability, See, if they ask biogenetic variability, I would suggest you to write Guha's classification. So Guha's classification, in Guha's classification you can write Negrito, Proto-Australoid, Mongoloids. Paleo-Mongoloids, Tibeto-Mongoloids, Paleo-Mongoloids, long-headed and broad-headed. See, this is the most accurate one, even though in terms of blood groups and various genetic markers we can also explain, but that is very skewed. Earlier also we have seen with respect to genetic markers there is no specific thing. So biogenetic variability, you can write this one, you can take down. I think you have taken it earlier also. Then you have linguistic variability. And linguistic variability, you can write this Austroasiatic, Tibeto-Chinese, and some Dravidian language family. So these three are important. So these things you have to write. So this, I think, is a second chapter. You have already written all these things. So I think you have. Yes. See, one topic is there, socio-economic characteristics. So based on the economic activity of tribal people, D.N. Majumdar classified tribes into tribes engaged in hunting, so tribes engaged in agriculture on hilly areas, so tribes engaged in agriculture in plain areas, then tribes engaged in pastoralism, so tribes who work as agricultural laborers and other laborers, so tribes engaged in folk arts, artisan works, tribes engaged in folk arts, and tribes engaged in service and trade. So there is no specific classification with state socio-economic classification, it is economic classification. And it is expected that if you know the economic activity, we can write their societal features, like hunting, gathering, you know the societal features. Shifting cultivation or Jum cultivation, cultivation in plain areas, agriculture, maybe pastoralism. This agricultural laborers, general condition, you know, artisan work, folk art, service and trade. So it is expected that you can write the societal features based on their economic activity, which we have already seen in economic anthropology. So based on this, this is the only classification which is relevant to this particular topic. But as I said, there is no specific classification. It says socio-economic classification or socio-economic characters. So please write, put the heading socio-economic characteristics of tribal population and their distribution. Socio-economic characteristics of tribal population and their characteristics. D.N. Majumdar, based on economic typology, classified tribal population in India into 8 types. First one, tribes engaged in hunting. Example, Kadar, Kamar, Malapatram, Juangs, Chenchus, Chandis, Andamanis, Nicobaris, yes, Chenchu, etc. Next, tribes engaged in agriculture on hilly areas. Also known as shifting cultivation or Jum cultivation, and known by different names in different parts of the country. Tribes engaged in agriculture in hilly areas. Shifting cultivation, Jum cultivation, and different names in different parts of the country. Example, tribes of Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Assam. Some Baigas, Mundas, Asurs. Next, tribes engaged in agriculture in plain areas. Tribes engaged in agriculture in plain areas like Gonds of Bihar and Chhattisgarh, Bodo and Miri of Assam, etc. Next, tribes engaged in pastoralism. Gaddis, Bakarwals, Todas, etc. Tribes engaged in pastoralism. Gaddis, Bakarwals, Todas, etc. Yes. Next, tribes engaged as agricultural laborers and other workers. This type of tribal groups are present in Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, West Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, who have been displaced due to various developmental activities. Artisan works. Tribes engaged in artisan works. Tribes engaged in artisan works. Collams, even Asurs. These are excellent mat weavers. Irula. These are snake charmers or snake catchers. Mat weavers. Irula are excellent snake charmers. Next one, tribes engaged in folk arts. Tribes engaged in folk arts. Nuts of UP, Munduptu of Orissa. So nuts are stage shows. Munduptu are acrobats. Nuts of UP, stage shows, drama. Munduptu, Orissa. Munduptu of Orissa. Acrobat means, like acrobat somersaulting, they are doing some kind of gymnastic kind of thing. tribes engaged in service and trade. Meenas of Rajasthan, Meena, some Nagas and some Mizos. So this is the socio-economic distribution of tribal people and obviously corresponding their activities. 6.2 problems of the tribal communities. So this will take some time. So in which different problems were given. So we'll start with land alienation. So land alienation here refers to involuntary surrender of one's own land. It is not a voluntary thing. Now this land is a major resource of livelihood for all the tribal people, and that is why this land itself is a major problem for them, because if they are involuntarily surrendering their land for various reasons, then obviously they are deprived of their livelihood. Because on the land, we have seen nature man spirit complex, they are dependent on all their needs on the land and forest in which they are living. So obviously any kind of thing which affects this one will affect their livelihood as a whole. Now this land alienation took place in 3 different phases. So phase 1 is during medieval period, when kings gave tribal land to non-tribal people for cultivation. So this is the first time when these people started getting affected. And phase 2 is after the advent of British rule. The British people, for their own vested interests, by various acts and policies, they regulated the activities of tribal people and deprived them of their rights. So this is the second phase of land alienation. And phase 3 of land alienation after independence, because of various developmental activities like creation of infrastructure, mining activities, so on and so forth. So in all these cases, as I said, they were deprived of their livelihood. In response to this, there were different protests of tribal people. Like some tribal people preferred to remain silent. Some people like staged violent protests, and some NGOs are staging protests on behalf of the tribal people after independence. But during this British rule, there were certain tribal rebellions or tribal revolts through which these tribal people have showed their discontent over the British rule and regulating their activities. Now all those tribal revolts were ruthlessly suppressed, and this protest started after independence. So these are different things. So what are the causes, consequences? And what are the measures to be taken, we will be discussing. according to Kaka committee. So write some introduction related to land alienation. Land alienation. Land is a major source of livelihood for tribal people. Historically, tribal people held their land rights. Tribal people held their land rights based on family, clan, and as a community. Land alienation is fundamentally a complex sociological phenomena, which involves involuntary surrender of one's own land, involuntary surrender of one's own land to others. In such a condition, an alienated man lives in an alienated environment and the product of his labor is estranged from him. Put the side heading historical background. Historical background. There are three phases of land alienation. First one, phase 1. This started during medieval period. When kings started, medieval period, when kings started allotting tribal land to non-tribal people for cultivation purposes. Next one, phase 2. This started after the advent of British rule, which unveiled the Iron Curtain between tribal people and non-tribal people. It all started with Dalhousie who issued a memorandum on forest conservation in 1855. Now subsequently in 1865, 78, 94, 1927, several acts and policies were enacted which obviously regulated. This person said that shifting cultivation or the slash and burn cultivation is creating a lot of damage to the environment. So citing their concern on environment, they prohibited the slash and burn cultivation in certain areas. But however, this person emphasized on teak production to be sent to the shipbuilding industry in Birmingham. So this was the story. So as I said, like it started with Dalhousie, and then as I said, like various acts and policies prevented their activities in their land and forest, that we can see in various acts and policies before and after independence. As I said, 65, 78, 94, 1927. These were the four time frames through which they have brought various acts and policies. So here only just write one line. Subsequently, through various acts and policies, Britishers regulated the activities of tribal people in their own land and forest. Depriving them of their traditional rights. Out of the discontent, tribal people staged various rebellions or revolts, which were ruthlessly crushed by the British forces. These rebellions, I think you know, like Gond Rebellion, Bill Rebellion, Andaman and Nicobar, Santhal Rebellion, so on and so forth. That also we'll study here. I'm just giving you a sequence because there are topics which further discusses these rebellions. You get my point. Next one, phase 3. So phase 3. This phase started after independence. See, after independence also almost the forest administration continued on the lines of British administration only. Like again, the different acts and policies like 1952 to 1972, and then there were 3 committees, and in 1988 there was a new national forest policy, and in 2006 there was Scheduled Tribes and other traditional forest dwellers recognition of Forest Right Act. So until 2006 they were definitely affected even by the government policies, because they did not give any special privileges or concessions, and their livelihood was not very much different from how it was in the Britishers, because the administration continued on the lines of the British administration only. Further, certain things were even more deprived until 2006. 1988 is like forest population friendly thing, but again 2006 was a landmark event. So here the main problem here after independence is developmental activities, because minerals, where they are staying, it is rich with minerals which needed to be exploited for the economic development, economic growth and development. So in that pursuit, definitely the tribal people are affected and displaced from their habitat, and the problems of rehabilitation and resettlement automatically surfaces. So after independence, it is mainly due to developmental activities, isn't it? So please write, after independence, because of various developmental activities like mining, construction of dams, hydroelectric power projects, construction of roads and other infrastructure, declaration of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, etc. Deprived tribal people of their traditional rights and common property resources. You get me? See, common property resources are maybe like grazing areas, or maybe water resources, or some other thing where they get all these things free of cost. So these are common to all the community as a whole. So traditional rights as well as common property resources. Yes. Due to this displacement, and improper rehabilitation and resettlement, there was an unrest among project affected tribal populations in the country. There were mainly three types of protests. Three types of protests. First one, silent protest. Example, coals of Mirzapur. Coals of Mirzapur. Number two, violent protests. Tribal groups in Kerala. Third one, NGOs staging protests on behalf of tribal people. NGOs staging protests. NGOs staging protests on behalf of tribal people. Example, Shakti NGO in Andhra Pradesh. Shakti NGO. In Andhra Pradesh. So this is the historical background. We have written what is land alienation, and we have given different phases of land alienation. Now, what are the causes? Put the side heading, causes of land alienation. So what are the causes? Over dependency on land and forests. So whenever some people are, like any group or individual, are overly dependent, then obviously that itself becomes a major issue. We started with the same thing only. And lack of access to like documentary records, or improper and not so satisfactory state of land records or documents. Maybe sometimes like illegal transfers or binami transactions, nexus between politicians, bureaucrats and businessmen, maybe red tapeism, maybe encroachments. We have seen like developmental activities. This could also have been done by means of fictitious adoptions, or maybe illegal marital alliances or concubinages. So these are various means by which the tribal people are deprived of their land and land rights. So please write causes. Point by point you write. Point number one, over dependency on land and forest. Next one, lack of access to land records and land documents. Next, unsatisfactory state of land records. Next, in some places where land was provided, documents were not given. When land was provided, documents or pattas were not provided. In some places, documents or pattas were given, but land was not allocated. In some places, documents and pattas were provided, but land was not allocated. You read this in Forest Rights Act, FRA. Next one, next point you can write. Illegal transfers and Binami transactions Next one, encroachments. Next one, various developmental activities. Next one, marital alliances and concubinages. Marital alliances and concubinages. Next, fictitious adoptions. Next, nexus between politicians, bureaucrats, and businessmen. Red tapeism. Next one, lack of education and awareness. Lack of education and awareness of their rights. So these are the various consequences of land alienation. I think we have covered almost. What are the consequences? Put the side heading consequences. See, in causes you also write urbanization, industrialization. We have connection with the next topic. So in causes you can write urbanization, industrialization. In causes, yes, please. What? Urbanization, industrialization, globalization. So what are the consequences? Loss of traditional rights on land and forest and common property resources. So this is one thing. So displacement problems are there. Displacement leads to distress, maybe social alienation, and even social disintegration, loss of traditional wealth, isn't it? Maybe they may take armed struggle or armed resistance, which leads to Naxalism in certain areas. So problems with rehabilitation, and resettlement. Isn't it? Maybe indebtedness, all other problems arise, bonded labor, poverty. This will have a spillover effect. It will affect the education of the subsequent generations. Because of low income and poor living conditions, poor nutrition, poor health indicators. Isn't it? So the biggest problem is land alienation. If it is affected, all the factors or all the aspects of life get affected. So put the side heading consequences. Consequences. Point by point you write loss of traditional rights. Loss of traditional rights on land and forest, and common property resources, and common property resources. Next, loss of livelihood, low income, forced migrations, exploitation by non-tribal people, distress, social alienation, social disintegration, loss of tribal wealth, armed struggle or resistance, Naxalism, next one displacement and improper rehabilitation and resettlement, displacement and improper rehabilitation and resettlement will lead to poor living conditions, like lack of sanitation, hygiene, access to clean drinking water, poor nutrition, and poor health. Next, it may also lead to indebtedness, bonded labor in debt, bonded labor, slavery, and poverty. Next, such a situation has a spillover effect. Such a situation has a spillover effect on the next generations, depriving them of education, and other opportunities. Next paragraph you write, the causes of land alienation are multifactorial, and its effect or effects is multidimensional. See, I think earlier we have seen one situation where maybe because of pseudo tribalism or pseudo tribalization, where we have seen the example of Banjaras, Lambadas, or Sugalis after they were recognized as scheduled tribe in Andhra Pradesh in 1976. From neighboring areas, there was a huge influx of this community, which led to displacement of scores of indigenous. This is a situation which indicates a particular group or a tribal group depriving another tribal group. So put the side heading case study. Case study. In 1976, the state of Andhra Pradesh recognized Banjaras or Lambadis or Sugalis / Lambadi, Lambada, Sugali, SUGALI, as scheduled tribe and therefore entitled to certain privileges and benefits. However, in the adjacent states, adjacent states, they were not recognized as scheduled tribe. This led to huge scale influx of this group from neighboring states into the state of Andhra Pradesh, displacing scores of indigenous tribal groups like Kollams, Koyas, Chenchus, Gonds, etc. Gond, etc. Pseudo-tribalization by means of migrations can also lead to displacement of tribal people from their own habitat. So these are the causes and consequences. These are pretty straightforward and easy to understand. See, some measures were given by this Kaka committee, who is a high power steering committee appointed by Government of India to study the problems of tribal communities and recommend certain measures to curtail such kind of things. So this report stated certain measures to address this issue of land alienation and the subsequent problems related to rehabilitation and resettlements. So put the side heading measures or suggestions. Given by Kaka committee. Please write measure suggestions of Kaka committee. Government of India constituted a high power steering committee. Government of India constituted high power steering committee under the leadership of Professor Virginius Kaka of Delhi University, to study the tribal problems to suggest the tribal problems in India. This committee recommended certain measures to address the issue of land alienation and problems arising out of displacement, rehabilitation, and resettlement. You get my point? So if we see the chronological order, as I said, 1988 new National Forest Policy and 2006 Forest Rights Act, or Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act, and in 2013 there was a committee, there was this Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013. So this land acquisition, in this one there is right to fair compensations and transparency. Where in acquisition of land and rehabilitation. So one thing leads to another thing. Forest Right Act and other subsequent changes that occurred led to this act, and in this act they have given this right to the project affected or displaced people. So in this act also, like, even though this is very progressive in the sense according to Kaka committee, this particular act has certain loopholes. So this act doesn't specify the need to minimize the acquisition of land. So if there is no particular feature or a point which states the need for minimizing acquisition of land, it will only lead to more and more acquisition of land. That is what is happening across the country even today. And this act also further vaguely defines the word public purpose, and if there is no specific definition for the word public purpose, then obviously again this will lead to more and more acquisition of land. You get my point? And this land also states that a multi-crop irrigated land can be acquired only in the last resort, but again it doesn't state the need to minimize acquisition of the tribal land and rural land. So all these things, even though this particular act is progressive, it is curved with certain drawbacks. So we'll write first something related to this act, and then we'll go to the subsequent measures. Yes, please write. First one. The right to fair compensations and transparency. Fair compensations and compensation, right to fair, FAIR, fair compensations and transparency in Land Acquisition Rehabilitation Act 2013 is progressive in the sense that right to fair compensations and transparency in Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013. Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013 is progressive in the sense that it wanted to duly address the concerns of project affected tribals. However, this act does not specify the need to minimize land acquisition. Next, the act further states that multi-crop irrigated land can be acquired only in the last resort however it does not specify the need to protect the tribal land and resources. Need to protect tribal land and resources. Further, Kaka committee suggests that the definition of public purpose has to be limited. The definition of public purpose has to be limited. Otherwise, it leads to acquisition of more and more acquisition of land, more and more acquisition of tribal land. Next point, government agencies with an ultimate purpose of transferring the acquired land, government agencies with the ultimate purpose of transferring the acquired land to private agencies should be kept outside the purview of the act. Should be kept outside the purview, P-U-R-V-I-E-W, purview of the act. Next, Kaka committee suggests that the stringent provisions of Land Transfer Regulation Act 1959 of the government of Andhra Pradesh should be enacted by other states also, particularly the provisions of formation of cooperative societies, Next point. The provisions of PESA 1996 has to be suitably amended to ensure Grama Sabha's participation, to ensure Gram Sabha participation during land acquisition. Gram Sabha participation during land acquisition. Next, Grama Sabha's consent should be made mandatory even in case of acquisition of land by the government for government use. Acquisition of land by the government for government use. Next, Gram Sabha should be suitably empowered. Gram Sabha should be suitably empowered to restore the alienated land, after detection. Detecting the alienated land. Next, plenary provisions should be provided to Gram Sabha to fight long pending legal cases. Long pending legal cases. Next, government has to provide training and legal awareness to youth and women, education and legal awareness and training to youth and women on various modern democratic institutions, laws, policies, contextualized in accordance with their customary law. Next, priority should be given to scheduled tribes. In settling the surplus land. Yes, next point. A high level fact finding committee. A high level fact finding committee should be constituted to monitor the problems of rehabilitation and resettlement. Problems of rehabilitation and resettlement. Next, government and private agencies who pollute land, water and other resources should be made to should be made to treat this pollution these are some measures given by Kaka committee on land alienation. Today's question you write, discuss the problem of land alienation among tribes of India.